This video features scale and pattern ideas relating to a driveway. The first design question when dealing with a large area like this, and particularly a large house with a relatively small garden relative to the size of the house, is how to landscape in a way that makes the house look smaller. And to do that, what you want to do is very large, simple masses of plantings and patterns. And the reason for that is, if you can look at these two lines of edging here, the eye is going to reference the house with a clear and simple pattern in front here. So it's going to decide if the house is too big for the lot or too small or just the right size based on the pattern of what's in front of it and what's behind it. And so you can do that. You can put in some elements that make the house smaller in a variety of ways. But one of the best is to do a very simple swath of planting. Now if you look over here, they're using trees and lawn. Lawn is a uniform mass of planting. But in this case, the client would like to have low-maintenance, drought-tolerant plants. So we've removed a large lawn. And what we're going to be putting in is, in this area here, we're going to do the entire bed between this edging and this in two types of lavender. And what that's going to do for the eye is it's going to let the eye compare the house with a single mass of lavender. And in doing so, the house is going to look smaller. The primary view of the house is from a rather busy intersection and a distance of 30 to 80 feet. And so we want a relatively simple planting. And then the next, so we've got the element of scale here. The next thing that we look at is how to divide up the themes. Since we want the themes to be simple, what's going to define them? Now, I took my cue from the client who said they wanted a home garden, and they wanted a street garden, and they wanted some flowing lines that went diagonally across the property. And that suggested a wave theme. And what we've done with that is we've created three waves where we have, starting at the street over here, we have the first wave, which is the presentation from the street. Then we have the buffer wave, which is the plants that are both compatible visually and functionally with the street wave, and the house wave. And then finally, up above the second edging here, we have the house garden. This is the garden that's going to look the nicest, looking out of the house windows and walking up to the front door. So now that we've defined the waves, we have a relatively artistic client on this job, and who likes to paint. And so we're actually looking at how can we treat this garden as a canvas. And the way that we're going to do that is with two colors of bark. So the first wave here is going to be the traditional red mulch, which you see over, it's kind of the predominant traditional mulch. But at this first edging wave line, we're going to go to a black mulch. Finally, on the upper wave, which is going to curve through the sidewalk here and around here, we're going to have the traditional tan or red mulch again. And the black with red on both sides is going to the eye from above, but also to the eye of the car driving by, going to emphasize this wave pattern, which will be further strengthened by plantings. So next came the concept of whether or not to carry that in any way into the driveway. And in this case, we have a relatively old driveway, which when we began was stained fairly dark. It's got a few cracks in it. And the client doesn't like the glare. And to replace a driveway like this, you're looking at, you know, $20,000 to $30,000 to do it nicely. And the question is, on a much more limited budget, can we create something beautiful? So the concept we came up with was to do the same wave patterns using an acid dye. So you can see we've done a little bit of a sample right here, and we've based it on some samples we've done on the past few days in this little area right here. And this is what we're aiming for. We're aiming for the black mulch to be represented with this color, ebony, and then this color to be the walnut. And what we're going to have is the walnut, the ebony, and then back to the walnut. And as you can look from the line of the bark, you can see that we've cut a groove in the driveway here, all the way over to here. And this is allowing us to not only get rid of the glare, not only darken the concrete, which will hide many of the cracks, not only highlight these tile insets that we've been putting in the center, but it's going to allow the eye to look at the entire garden as a vista sweep, like a great painting. And rather than having one garden, one garden, one garden, one garden, the eye is going to see the entire theme going across the entire property. Now this is particularly pleasing when cars are driving by, because at a distance of 10 to 30 feet and at an average mile per hour of around 20 on this street, you want a very simple theme for the eye to appreciate it, not be overwhelmed, and not for, like, if you look at this garden over here, your eye is just lost because there's no pattern, and so it quickly turns away. But the eye tends to linger and really appreciate a very simple planting. So we're going to be having plants go all the way along the front, all the way along the middle, and all the way along the top. Now the top will be incredibly eclectic, because that's going to be viewed from just 5 to 6 feet and out of the windows. So that's where we're going to have a lot of the plants massed in about a 5 foot by 5 foot scale. So, and then these two rocks were already on site, so I just moved them. I moved this rock over here, and we had this concrete edging going all the way around what was this old lawn. And what we did with the grass is we stripped it all off using a desolder. We had this huge pile of grass. And some of the great English gardens, such as Kew Estate in England, they began with these very deep trenches in which they would compost organic matter and then fill in soil on top, so that the plants would have these very deep root systems. And I worked out that the cost of doing deep trenching in this area under this berm, bringing up subsoil, mixing it with the sod, and then remixing it with our top dressing of amendment, was less money then hauling off the sod, losing all the compost value, and then bringing in fill to extend this berm. So that's exactly what we did, and we used the same machine then to place 1, 2, 3, and 4, all 4 of the rocks. The big one over there was too close to the street and just felt awkward. So what makes this whole series of ideas and concepts particularly interesting from a design and a client perspective is how inexpensive they are. What I mean by that is it doesn't change the cost to have 2 colors of dye in a beautiful pattern that accentuates the planting, but that will look nice even if the plantings change. If there's a new owner or client does a refresh, this pattern is still beautiful. But as long as this garden stays consistent with this design, and we've got the same thing going on over here, it's going to be these wonderful, slightly different tones of color, which are going to simultaneously bring out the tile. And they'll fade a little bit over time, so we want to start bold, a little bit more boldly. Having 2 types of mulch is virtually not any more expensive than having 1 type of mulch. But what it does is it gives the eye these wonderful moving shapes that will have about half of the visual impact of the whole garden. In other words, we'll be doubling the visual impact of the whole garden with no extra cost. And this is really where good design comes in. You want ideas that can double or triple the functional value or impact of a design and that don't cost any more money. That's a terrific design. Thanks for watching, and hope you've got some ideas.